Okay. Okay. Wow, those cicadas are really loud. Whew. Hi there. I'm TL Bainter. I live in Kansas City with my cat. I've written a few short stories and one novel. Two of my short stories have received honorable mentions from the Writers of the Future competition. I love stories. I enjoy telling them as well as experiencing them, and I'll take them in pretty much any medium, be that books or movies, television shows, video games, what have you. If it's a great story, I want to experience it. This channel is part of my foray onto the internet. I have always had an internet presence of some sort. As unfortunate as that is, I definitely should not have been spewing my first thoughts back when I was 13 or so. That wasn't great. But hopefully I have learned quite a bit since then. I've never really given much attention or care to my presence. I haven't focused on building a brand or establishing a consistent presence, nor have I really worked to market myself. I've just put whatever I feel like putting out there, and whoever happens to look, looks. This isn't a great way to build yourself up, especially in an era where authors and creators need a solid presence that resonates with people in order to be successful. There are obviously some exceptions to this, but a lot of authors, particularly those who take the self-publishing route, have a very strong internet presence on at least one platform. That is where you're going to find your audience and build it. Otherwise, you are going to be shouting about your book into an echo chamber and no one's going to know what it's about or even that it exists. So I'm creating this channel as a way to receive feedback from a community and actually build a community for my content and my work and the things that I'm passionate about. The best way that I can do that is going to be through stories. That's what I care about, and that's what I want to put out there into the world is stories. In order to make that happen, I need to create a channel that's dedicated to story. Because I am creating this channel specifically to find like-minded people who I can interact with and who I can establish a community with that gives feedback to me, I am going to focus it largely on story. This channel is going to have three main focuses, at least at the start. Maybe this will change in the future, but right now this is my plan. The three focuses will be advice and discussion surrounding stories, reviews of stories, and finally, personal stories, which is the category that a video like this would fall under. Later on in this video, I'll do a deep dive into what all three of those things mean and what sort of content you can expect from each of the categories. Before I do that, I want to talk just a little bit about what I have been doing thus far and why I'm really starting this and what I hope to get out of it. So, why now? I was working on determining where I was headed. I knew what my end goal was and has been for, I don't even know, maybe 20 years now, honestly. I've wanted it since I was a kid, and that's to be able to live really off of my stories. Being able to support myself just from the money that I get from my stories. That has been my goal for as long as I can remember. The general idea behind that goal has changed every now and then. I might add some things to it. For example, initially it was I want to publish books and that's it. And after a while, that kind of shifted to I'd love to be able to develop games and tell stories that way. And now I'm working on writing campaign setting modules for role-playing games. Maybe in the future I'll start publishing those and try to support myself with those as well, right? So it's gotten really broad and has really expanded into this giant monster that almost seems insurmountable. Instead of looking at it as I have all of these different possible revenue streams, I'm looking at it as I have this giant monster that I have to tackle and something that is insurmountable. Like I will never be able to do all of these things. And this is something that was starting to cross my mind as I geared up to do this. And this is one of the reasons that led to me wanting to do this. When I looked back at everything I've accomplished in recent years, I found that I haven't done all that much. I've actually accomplished very little the last few years. I have spread myself very thin and done a few things across multiple different avenues because I was trying to tackle that monster of, I want to make sure that I am pursuing every possible revenue stream to support myself. So I was spread very thin, but I had nothing to show for all of it. In the last few years, I've written some short stories, released at least one of them, Another one I intend to release here pretty soon. And I run a successful homebrew Dungeons & Dragons campaign. We're on our second one right now. It's a lot of fun, but I kind of look at it more as a pastime hobby than a source of possible revenue in the future. I might release the campaign setting at some point because I'm pretty proud of the world I built. And then I've also been focusing a lot on game development. On top of that, I've had all of these books that I want to write, and I've have outlines, and I've written and rewritten some of them. The point being that I've done all of these things and I've spread myself across all of these different avenues, but in the end, I haven't actually accomplished all that much. I don't have a lot to show for it except for one short story that, in my opinion, is all right. It's not the best that I could do, but every author kind of looks at their past works and thinks, I could do better. The thing I noticed is that I was very busy. I had a lot on my plate and a lot that I was doing and trying to take care of. But while I was really busy, I was not accomplishing very much at all. I was not achieving any goals. I wasn't finishing more than 1 or 2 projects a year, maybe at most. All of this to say, I wasn't anywhere closer to achieving my end goal of supporting myself with story than I had been 10 or 15 years ago, which is unfortunate. That's obviously not what you want, and it wasn't how I thought things were going to go for me. So I took a few days to sit down and refocus my goals. I made a list of all the things I was spending my time on, charted it out, how much time am I really dedicating to this, and how close am I to actually achieving this goal? And by laying it out like that and looking at how much time I was spending on everything and what I was prioritizing and what I was deprioritizing as a result, helped me start figuring out what I needed to do in order to actually start accomplishing things and reaching goals and finishing projects. Obviously, the biggest thing that is eating my time right now is a full-time job. That's not really something that I can throw away at this stage. Maybe in the future I will get to that point. That is, again, obviously the ultimate goal is supporting myself telling stories, and that will replace that full-time job. But because I rely on that full-time job right now, it's something that has to stay. Continue to be a time sink, and I have to look at the other things that I do recreationally to start cutting those. The next biggest thing that I found I was investing the most time into was actually game development. This is kind of unfortunate because I enjoy the game development aspect. The problem with it is that I'm doing so many different things and I'm spread across so many different pieces of software that when I am gone for even just a few weeks or so, and I try to get back into game development, I almost have to redo most of the tutorials to start getting back into that flow and that rhythm that I had before. Specifically things like Substance Painter. That's a very complicated piece of software, and when you're not doing it consistently, you'll lose a lot of the muscle memory that you get using that software. So what I found I was really spending most of my time doing was not working toward game development, it was working toward being able to work toward game development. And by the time that I would get myself back up to speed on how to do things and start producing things, work would pick back up again, or I would get stressed out by other things in my life and I just wouldn't be able to focus on it. And once again, I'd fall back into that slump. And so each time I return to game development, it's usually just to redo some tutorials. That's obviously not a great use of my time for the different pieces of software that I need. The idea right now is that once I'm done with my full-time job, game development will probably become at least a part-time job so that I can make sure I'm working on it consistently, staying up to date, and really making the most of my time with that. It is something that I'm passionate about and that I enjoy and that I really want to use as a medium for telling stories. But right now, it's just not feasible for me, as hard as that was for me to admit. Piling onto that, I was writing several different books that didn't have an end in sight. I was working on music composition, a few other small hobbies here and there, going on hikes, going on runs about 3 or 4 days a week. And then sometimes I would spend an entire day watching TV or playing games because I'd had a very stressful week and I wanted to relax, which there's nothing wrong with that at all. I don't think that there's anything wrong with taking an entire day to relax. The problem is when that entire day turns into my whole weekend I spent doing absolutely nothing. I didn't get anything that I care about done, and I feel like I wasted my time. And that was pretty much how my life was going, right? The few free hours that I had, I would either work on a project with no end, or I would watch TV or play a game or just sleep, which is not productive. Again, I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a day to yourself, but for me, it was definitely a slump and has been a slump for a while. So I grouped all of these things together. I really analyzed how much time I was spending on each of them and how important they were to me in the long run. I needed to know, is this something that I would be willing to give up everything else for? And the only thing that I knew for sure I didn't want to give up was writing and releasing books. I enjoy that. That was the thing that gave me the most joy in the end. So of all of these, the one that I knew for sure I couldn't cut was going to be writing a story. Everything else, it was hard to cut, particularly things like music composition, which I enjoy, and game development, which I obviously love, but these are things that I knew I wasn't really going anywhere with them, and they weren't getting me any closer to my goal. So they're things that I need to put on the back burner. So I obviously will still play games and watch movies and television shows and that sort of thing, but I need to make sure that I'm not sinking an entire weekend into these activities when there are other things that I know matter to me and that I love that are waiting for me to focus on them. I found large blocks of each day that I could dedicate to the 3 things that I determined were going to be most important to me, which are going to be writing books, reading books, and building a community. That's why this is happening now. I'm refocusing myself and ensuring that whatever I'm doing, whatever I'm spending my time on, is ultimately leading toward that goal I have of being a storyteller. Part of that is being more actively engaged online. This will help me build and find a community that I can interact with who are like-minded and who are interested in the same things that I am. This is an important part of what I'm trying to do here. I know that having a community that supports itself and supports each other and supports me truthfully, and that I can support in return and continue marching forward. My thinking is the best place where I can find these people who are like-minded and passionate about stories is the Booktube community. I mentioned that there will be 3 core focuses to this channel: discussion and advice, story reviews, and personal stories. This is where I am going to clarify what each of these focuses really mean and dive into what you can expect from this channel. My first focus will be centered around discussion and advice about stories. I'll be drawing on knowledge that I've gleaned from several years of writing and telling stories. I used to be falsely under the impression that I didn't have anything to offer in this regard, but I'm trying to be better about not diminishing my own accomplishments. My goal here would be to share whatever I have learned with anyone who needs to hear it. There are some things that you learn the hard way, and if I can make sure that someone learns it the easy way instead and gets a head start on their career as a storyteller, then that would be awesome. I'll be kicking off videos about this on Monday with a series about constructing a homebrew campaign and campaign setting for a tabletop role-playing game. The material will be written with Dungeons & Dragons in mind because that's what I have the most experience with. However, I intend to present everything in a way that allows it to be applied to any tabletop role-playing game, as long as it allows you to create your own setting and campaign. My next focus is story reviews. I'm specific about calling these story reviews because while most of what I review on the channel will be books, I am also going to be reviewing some video games or movies or TV shows every now and then. I don't think it's going to be very often. In fact, I've planned several weeks ahead and I only have a couple of things that aren't books, maybe 3 or 4. And I'm not even sure if I'm going to get to those because I have a lot of books that I want to read. My standard for reviewing is a 5-star format, essentially meaning that 1 is a terrible book, 3 is a pretty average book, which isn't bad, and 5 is a great book, maybe one of the best. Now, every story review that I do on this channel will be spoiler free. I have some plans to maybe do like private or unlisted spoiler reviews at some point in the future, maybe, just because there's going to be some aspects of the book that I want to talk about, but that I feel like I can't if I'm trying to keep my review free of spoilers. So that's something I'm considering, but as it stands, I want this entire channel to be devoid of spoilers for the content that I'm reviewing so that people can come and listen to an opinion of somebody who read the entire story and just wants to tell you what you can expect and what you can look forward to. So I'll go into some really basic summaries of the book's premise. Things like what you would find on the inside cover will probably be the full extent of what I really cover in my reviews, right? Because I want you to have the same raw experience that I wanted to have. There are several aspects to my reviews that I will be breaking down in each one. So the first one is going to be world building. This is how well the author built the world and presented it to me. I want to give credit to the idea behind the world if it's great, even if the world building was terrible. And likewise, if the idea of the world wasn't really my cup of tea, but I really enjoyed the way the world was presented to me, I feel like those should be 2 separate things. So I'm splitting them into 2 different parts. And I think it will become clearer over time with each of my reviews as to why I'm doing that and what kind of criteria I'm looking for. So obviously the world building, the world, that's 2 of my different review points. I'm also going to review the pacing, characters, plot, writing, and then finally my overall thoughts, summarizing everything that I think about the book. So each of these different categories will receive a 1 to 5 star rating, and then I will just average those together for the final one. So even if a book gets, all 1s in one category and then gets a 5 in another, it might end up being a 2-star book because at least it has something going for it. But you'll be able to see me break down my thoughts in each of those, and hopefully that helps you make a decision, because different things are going to matter to you than what matters to me. The last focus that I'm going to have for this channel is my personal stories. This doesn't necessarily mean books that I write, although this is where I will talk about some of that, but it's really just me and my life. I have plans to do ranking of certain video games in a series and talking about some of my favorite stories out there. And I want to go through some of my really old, really cringy writing. That's going to be a little while, I think, because some of that I really don't want to share just yet because it's pretty bad. But yeah, some of my really old stuff from when I was an angsty teenager. The last thing that I want to talk about is consistency. Across every article and video tutorial and lesson that I've watched surrounding being successful on a platform like YouTube is consistency. They all say you have to be consistent. You have to be consistent with your content, and you have to be consistent, more importantly, with your uploads in order to make sure that the algorithm doesn't just bury you. What I want to focus on here is making sure that I'm creating content that I can upload consistently and schedule consistently. So I am grading my videos well in advance. You might notice some drastic changes in quality over time as I learn and grow through this process. And the plan right now is to do 3 videos a week, 1 on Monday, 1 on Wednesday, and 1 on Friday. And each one of those will reflect one of the focuses that I talked about. So Mondays will be for discussion and advice, that sort of thing. And then Wednesday will be book reviews, and Friday will be my personal stories, vlogs, things like that. My first real video beyond this is going to be coming out on Monday. It will be the overview of what we're going to talk about in my 15 or 16 part series on creating a homebrew campaign and campaign setting for a tabletop role-playing game. That's the first real video that I'm going to be putting out there that is going to be reflective of the kind of content I intend to release. So I'm pretty excited about that one. After Monday, the next video that comes out will be on Wednesday, when I'm going to be releasing a video review of Evan Winter's The Rage of Dragons. If either of those videos interest you, I would encourage you to subscribe and keep an eye on this channel. Be ready for them to be released on Monday and Wednesday. You can also find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All of those are at TL Bainter. I have the same handle across all 3 platforms, and I'll put links in the description to make it easier. Whatever form it comes in, I appreciate your support. And I look forward to seeing where this journey takes me and where I'm going to end up because of this. If you are somebody who wants to join me from the beginning, welcome and thank you.